He was a self-made black CEO, a tech visionary with everything money could buy. But one night at an upscale restaurant, a single word at the door. No. Unleashed a firestorm that would shake an entire industry. What happened next would turn humiliation into a movement. Marcus Ellison had fought his way from a childhood of scarcity to the top of the tech world. As the celebrated CEO of a billion-dollar company, he thought he had finally crossed every barrier. But on a cold evening in Chicago, when he arrived at an exclusive restaurant to celebrate a business deal, he was refused service. Not for lack of money or reservation, but because of the color of his skin. Within days, the footage went viral, sparking outrage, lawsuits, and a new civil rights movement called Project Open Doors. This is the shocking true-to-life story of how one act of discrimination transformed an executive into an activist, and a closed door into a nationwide reckoning. Rain threaded the streets of Baltimore like liquid steel, streaking neon reflections across cracked sidewalks and shuttered storefronts. In a narrow brick row house at the edge of the city's west side, a boy named Marcus Ellison sat cross-legged on a carpet worn down to its fibers, sketching his dreams with a broken pencil stub. He was only 8, but already building worlds on paper. Tiny circuit diagrams, futuristic offices, maps of neighborhoods rebuilt in shining glass and green trees. His mother, Althea, peeked in from the kitchen doorway, flour on her hands and worry in her eyes. She said softly, "You'll wear your eyes out in this dim light." "I'm making a plan," he replied. "Someday, I'm gonna build something that lasts." Althea smiled, but said nothing. She knew the weight behind those words. Their neighborhood chewed up big dreams and spit them out. But Marcus had a glint in his eyes, a stubborn spark she'd seen in her own father, a longshoreman who fought Union battles and still came home to read poetry aloud to his children. Marcus's father, Jerome, worked double shifts at the auto plant until the layoffs hit. By the time Marcus turned 10, Jerome was gone. First out of work, then out of the house entirely. Althea raised Marcus and his 2 sisters with a fierce, unbending love. She took on extra cleaning jobs, enrolled Marcus in a magnet school across town, and pressed books into his hands like survival tools. "The world will try to tell you who you are," she'd say. "Don't let it. Build yourself." That mantra became Marcus's oxygen. In middle school, Marcus discovered computers. The school lab had a row of beige boxes older than the teacher herself. The other kids used them to play simple games. Marcus opened the back panels to see what made them breathe. He learned BSIC and C from library books with cracked spines. By 9th grade, he was running a clandestine repair shop out of his mother's kitchen, soldering motherboards next to simmering pots of collard greens. Teachers alternated between awe and suspicion. "Hay's brilliant," one counselor wrote, "but it's too intense." Marcus didn't care. He saw technology as the key to moving beyond the invisible walls around his life. By 17, he'd won a statewide science fair with an early prototype of a mobile payment app, years before smartphones would make them mainstream. Reporters asked where he got the idea. Marcus simply said, "People in my neighborhood don't have banks, so I built one in a phone." It was his first taste of being. Both celebrated and doubted. of watching people's expressions shift when they realized he, a black kid from West Baltimore, was the mind behind the innovation. College was a battlefield of its own. Marcus earned a scholarship to a top tech school in Boston, but stepping onto that campus felt like stepping into another planet, gleaming dorms, casual wealth, a student body almost entirely white. Professors mispronounced his name. Classmates assumed he was an athlete or a diversity admit. Every time he walked into the computer science lab, a subtle silence fell. People pausing just long enough to signal. He was an outsider. Marcus fought isolation with excellence. He coded through the night, fueled by coffee and an old MP3 player loaded with Coltrane and Tupac. He interned at startups, filed patents, and published research under his own name, even when senior grad students tried to claim credit. By the time he graduated, he'd built a reputation as a prodigy with a social mission. And yet the slights continued. In interviews, he was asked about culture, fit. Recruiters blinked when he requested a leadership role instead of an entry, level 1. He took notes on all of it, quietly adding fuel to his determination. At 26, Marcus launched Ellison Tech, a platform combining AI-driven logistics with community-based commerce. It started in a one-room co-working space above a laundromat, staffed by 3 friends from college who believed in his vision. Investors dismissed them at first, until the revenue tripled in 6 months. Within 5 years, Ellison Tech became one of the fastest-growing companies in the Midwest, servicing Fortune 500 clients while reinvesting in local neighborhoods. Marcus became a symbol: young, brilliant, unapologetically black in an industry still dominated by white executives. He wore tailored suits, but also sneaker brands from small black-owned designers. He hired ex-offenders into his coding boot camps. He spoke at conferences about equity in tech. By 35, he was on the cover of national magazines. But power didn't erase memory. Marcus still remembered every door that had been closed, every sideways glance, every, "Sir, are you sure you're in the right place?" He carried those scars quietly, like data points in an internal algorithm. Which brings us to the night in question. It was late autumn in Chicago, the city where Marcus had relocated Ellison Tech's headquarters. The skyline glowed against a velvet sky, towers lit like circuit boards. Marcus had just finalized a multi-million-dollar deal with international investors. Work that would bring hundreds of jobs to underserved neighborhoods. His phone buzzed with congratulatory messages. His assistant offered to book a celebration dinner. "Somewhere nice," Marcus said. "No fanfare, just nice." He chose Le Jardin et Carlet, a French fusion restaurant in the Gold Coast district. Known for its Michelin-starred chef, vintage wine cellar, and velvet curtain booths, it was a place where whispered over oysters and discreet servers memorized regulars' preferences. Marcus had dined there once before with investors. Tonight would be his first time alone. He left his penthouse condo wearing a navy suit and a charcoal overcoat. The rain had returned, drumming on the roof of his black electric sedan as his driver navigated traffic. Marcus scrolled through his notes for tomorrow's board meeting, but felt a flutter of anticipation. It wasn't about the food. It was about marking a moment, one of those private rituals successful people allow themselves. He glanced at his reflection in the tinted window clean. Shaven. Eyes. Steady. A man who had built something from nothing. Yet somewhere deep inside, the boy from Baltimore still whispered warnings about places where he wasn't welcome. As the car pulled up to the restaurant's awning, Marcus noticed a pair of valets eyeing him, whispering. He chalked it up to the car, the suit. People always stared, but when he stepped onto the sidewalk, the air felt charged. Conversations on the patio slowed. A hostess at the door shifted her weight, glancing toward the maitre d'. Marcus smoothed his tie and approached the entrance. The maitre d', a thin man with silver hair and a smile that didn't reach his eyes, gave a practiced bow. "Good evening." "Sir," he said, "do you have a reservation?" "Yes," Marcus replied. "Ellison. Table for one." The man checked his tablet, frowned, and tapped the screen again. "I'm terribly sorry. We appear to be fully booked tonight." Marcus's gaze flicked past him. He could see empty tables set with polished silver. A couple behind him stepped forward without a reservation and were ushered in. He felt that old, familiar algorithm kick in. Data points of slights and evasions. But tonight, Ellison wasn't a kid from Baltimore. He was the CEO of a multi-million-dollar company. He straightened, his voice calm but firm. "I'll wait," he said. "I'm in no rush." The maitre d' hesitated. Rain hissed on the awning above. And somewhere deep in Marcus's chest, the boy with the broken pencil stub stopped drawing and looked up. Rain pattered like 1,000 quiet questions on the awning above Le Jardin Carlet. Marcus Ellison stood just inside the doorway, watching the maitre d' fidget with his tablet. The restaurant smelled of saffron, butter, and freshly cut roses. Behind the maitre d', warm light glowed off crystal glasses and polished cutlery. Everything about the place whispered luxury and composure, except the strained silence between the two men. Marcus could feel eyes on him. A couple at the bar whispered into each other's ears. Two businessmen in gray suits flicked glances in his direction before returning to their martinis. Even the hostess had frozen mid-smile, unsure whether to offer him a coat check or step away entirely. "I'll wait," Marcus repeated, keeping his tone level. Years of boardroom negotiations had taught him the power of calm speech. "I'm in no rush." The maitre d' shifted his weight and lowered his voice. "Sir, unfortunately we're at capacity. Perhaps you'd be more comfortable at another establishment." "Another establishment?" Marcus asked softly. "Why?" No, I didn't mean." The man glanced over his shoulder at the manager's station, but no one came to his rescue. "It's simply policy." Marcus raised an eyebrow. "Policy," he echoed. "And yet the couple behind me just got seated. I noticed they had no reservation." The maitre d's face flushed. "That was a cancellation. Very last minute." Marcus inhaled slowly through his nose. He could feel his pulse rise, but he kept his expression neutral, the way he did during tense negotiations. He reached into his coat pocket and drew out a sleek gold-edged card. It caught the light like a blade. "This is my black tier membership," he said. "According to your policy, I am guaranteed seating." The maitre d' looked at the card as if it were an accusation. He cleared his throat. "Sir, if you'll allow me a moment." He vanished into the dining room, weaving between tables. Marcus stayed put, letting the rain soak the back of his coat. His eyes scanned the rooms. on guest dates, business dinners, waiters gliding like dancers. None of them knew who he was, what he'd built, or how hard he'd worked to stand here. And yet Marcus could feel something deeper than inconvenience. It was the same coded signal he'd read in professors' eyes, in landlords' hesitation, in investors' polite deflections. It was not about policy. It was about him. When the Mac Trayer D returned, he was accompanied by a taller man in a dark suit, clearly the restaurant manager. This one wore a practiced smile but had tension in his jaw.
"Mr. Ellison,"
he said smoothly, glancing at the membership card. "We apologize for the misunderstanding. Unfortunately, tonight our VIP lounge is under renovation and we're at full capacity. Perhaps we can offer you a booking tomorrow evening." Marcus stared at him for a long moment. "Are you telling me," he said quietly, "that in this entire restaurant, there is not one table available?" "That's correct," the manager said. "Would be delighted to host you another night." Marcus looked past him. 3 tables sat empty, set for 2, candles flickering. He counted them deliberately. "Those?" he asked. The manager followed his gaze. "Reserved," he said quickly. Marcus slipped his phone from his pocket and tapped the camera on. The manager stiffened. "Sir, photography is not permitted inside the dining room." "I'm just taking notes," Marcus said. His voice stayed even but low, each word carrying the weight of restrained fury. "In case I need to remember later how this went." The manager's smile flickered. He lowered his voice. "Mr. Ellison, please understand. We're simply following protocol." Marcus slipped the phone back into his pocket. "Protocol," he repeated. "I know that word." He took a step back, scanning the restaurant one more time. He thought of his mother telling him to build himself. He thought of his employees, counting on him to be a leader. He thought of the boy with the broken pencil stub. Then he nodded once. "Thank you for your time," he said, and turned toward the door. The night air was cold and smelled faintly of rain, wet asphalt, and exhaust. Marcus paused under the awning, steadying himself. His driver looked up from the car, questioning. Shook his head. "Give me a minute." He pulled out his phone again, thumb hovering over his social media app. He'd posted about bias before, but always in the abstract. Tonight felt different, too blatant, too public to ignore. He tapped open a blank post and stared at the cursor. "I just got denied service at one of Chicago's most exclusive restaurants, despite a reservation and top-tier membership." 3 empty tables in plain sight, no explanation beyond. Policy. This is what discrimination looks like in 2025. He hesitated. Should he hit the post? He could already imagine the storm media, trolls, allies, board members calling him. But silence felt heavier than the risk. He tapped the post. Within 10 minutes, the post had over 1,000 likes and shares. Within an hour, it was trending nationwide under the hashtag #FateDiningWhileBlack. Marcus's assistant called him, her voice electric. "It's blowing up," she said. CNN just DM'd asking for a statement. Marcus slid into the back seat of his car and exhaled slowly. "Drive," he told his driver. "Anywhere." Notifications poured in like rain. Other black professionals shared their own stories. Food critics condemned the restaurant. Some commenters doubted him, demanding the full context. Others defended the restaurant with coded language about standards, and rules. Marcus, read the comments, jaw tight. This was bigger than dinner. This was about visibility, power, and the way even the highest achievements couldn't shield you from bias. As the car moved through downtown, Marcus's mind slipped back to another night years ago, when he was still in college. He and his classmates had gone to a bar near campus. The bouncer let everyone in except him. Overcapacity, the bouncer had said, even as more white students strolled past. Marcus had walked home alone in the snow, fists in his pockets, thinking he'd never feel so small again. And yet here he was. By the time Marcus reached his apartment, his phone was vibrating nonstop. His head of PR was on the line. "Marcus, we need to get ahead of this," she said. "We can issue a formal statement, request an apology." "I don't want an apology," Marcus said flatly. "I want accountability." "We'll need to decide how public you want to go," she said. "Interviews. Press conference." Marcus stared out at the skyline, blinked like circuitry across the dark. "Let them come," he said. "I'm done being quiet." Back at Le Jardin, B. Carlet, the staff huddled in the kitchen, buzzing with notifications. "Hey, posted about us," the hostess whispered. "Look at this. Dining while black is trending." The manager's face was drained of color. He knew what this meant. The restaurant's brand depended on exclusivity, but not this kind of exclusivity. The chef slammed a pan onto the stove. "You idiots," he snapped. "Do you have any idea who that was?" The maître d'hôtel wiped sweat from his brow. "I was just following protocol," he muttered, but the words rang hollow even to himself. Near midnight, Marcus sat in his living room, laptop open. The post had hit 2 million views. Civil rights attorneys were offering support. Influencers were tagging brands that had partnerships with the restaurant. The pressure was mounting. Marcus closed his eyes and breathed. He hadn't asked for this moment, but now it was his. The boy, with a pencil stub, had drawn a line. The man he'd become had crossed it. The sun rose over Chicago like an amber blade slicing through fog. Marcus Ellison hadn't slept. He sat at the glass dining table in his high-rise apartment, laptop open, coffee untouched. His phone pulsed with notifications. Journalists requesting interviews, friends texting support, strangers sharing their own scars. The hashtag #FifDiningWhileBlack had jumped from a local trend to the top of global feeds overnight. Influential chefs denounced Le Jardin, B. Carlet. Activists organized a protest for that very evening. Someone had already designed a meme of Marcus in his navy suit under the restaurant's awning with the caption. "Even a CEO can't eat here." Marcus scrolled through the feed. Thousands of people were telling stories, being followed around stores, turned away from clubs, treated like intruders in spaces their money could easily buy. It was like a hidden city had lit up under blacklight, revealing roads of discrimination no one wanted to map. A strange mix of fury and responsibility. He hadn't wanted to be a symbol. But the symbol had chosen him. Across town, the mood inside Le Jardin. E. Carlet was frantic. The kitchen usually smelled of butter and thyme. Now it smelled of panic. Deliveries arrived at picket lines. Diners canceled reservations en masse. Bloggers posted 1-star reviews. The food, but of the ethos. The manager paced in his office, tie loosened, eyes on his ringing phone. The owner, a silver-haired financier in Paris, was on the line demanding answers. Who is this man? Why did you deny him? Fix it. We're trying. The manager muttered. It's out of control. Servers whispered about lawsuits. The maitre d', who had always prided himself on precision and charm, now sat at the staff table, head in hands. He replayed the moment over and over. The card, the empty tables, Marcus's steady eyes. He had seen power before, but never power paired with dignity like that. It unsettled him. As Marcus's story exploded online, journalists dug into his past. Old photos of Marcus at science fairs circulated, headlines reading, Boy Genius. Turned tech mogul speaks out on racism. His TED Talks were reposted. Quotes from his mother's interviews resurfaced. Even the high school where he'd built his first app posted a statement of support. Marcus scrolled through the headlines. Boy Genius. Prodigy. Symbol. All labels he'd never asked for, but now carried like armor, and that's armored mites, and any light iced. He remembered nights coding alone in Boston, professors doubting him, recruiters brushing him aside. He remembered a VC once telling him he was too urban for their portfolio. Every slight fed into the man sitting here now, scrolling through a digital uprising. By midday, Marcus's assistant had compiled a spreadsheet of media requests: CNN, BBC, Al Jazeera, the New York Times, tech podcasts, civil rights forums. Some wanted statements, wanted exclusives. A civil rights attorney named Vanessa Reid called personally. Mr. Ellison, she said. I've handled cases like this before, but you're in a unique position. You have the resources and the platform. If you want to take action, we can build a precedent. Marcus rubbed his temple. I don't even know what I want yet, he admitted. Then start with this, Vanessa said. Don't let them control the narrative. You said it. At 5 p.m., hundreds of people gathered outside Le Jardin A. Carlet. Some held signs reading EQALCDNG and now TOUR, POLICY. Others held Marcus's photo aloft. Drums and chants echoed down the street, mixing with the smell of roasted garlic from nearby food trucks. Marcus watched a live stream from his office, feeling a lump in his throat. These were strangers, yet they were standing for him. Or maybe for themselves, through him. Inside the restaurant, patrons dined behind drawn curtains while staff peeked out at the crowd. The manager issued a bland statement about miscommunication. It only inflamed the protest. At 7 p.m., Marcus finally went live on his own account. He appeared in a simple black hoodie, sitting at his desk. The camera framed his face, calm, but unflinching. Last night I was denied service at a restaurant where I held a reservation and a membership. I wasn't turned away because of capacity. I was turned away because of perception. This isn't about one dinner. It's about an entire system of silent exclusions. I'm not here to destroy a business. I'm here to shine a light. What happens next isn't up to me alone. It's up to all of us. The live stream went viral instantly. Comments flooded in. Hearts, fists, tears. News anchors played the clip on repeat. Some brands that worked with Marcus announced donations to civil rights groups. Le Jardin A. Carlet's stock of goodwill, built over decades, evaporated overnight. By late night, the restaurant's PR firm released a glossy statement. Would deeply regret the misunderstanding with Mr. Marcus Ellison. LeJardin Carlet values diversity and inclusion and has launched an internal review to ensure this never happens again. But screenshots of employees' private posts leaked. Jokes about VIP quotas and keeping standards. The backlash intensified, for a boycott grew. At 2 a.m., Marcus sat alone again, phone silent for the first time all day. He stared at the city lights and thought of his mother. What would she say? She'd probably tell him to keep his head high, to use this moment not just for himself, but for change. He opened a blank document on his laptop and typed at the top, Object Open Doors. Underneath he wrote a national initiative to confront discrimination in public accommodations. Restaurants, hotels, services. Launch with data collection. Legal resources, education. He stared at the words. It felt like a seed. Outside his window, dawn began to stain the sky again. The city's hum rose like static. Marcus felt a shift inside. The quiet resolve of someone who has crossed a threshold. The boy with the broken pencil stub wasn't sketching anymore. He was drafting blueprints. The denial had started as a humiliation. Now it was a catalyst. Morning sunlight spilled across Marcus Ellison's office, turning the steel and glass into amber and chrome. He had been awake since 4, pacing between the window and the desk. Every news outlet now ran his name across the ticker. His assistant had brought bagels and coffee, but Marcus couldn't stomach either. His phone on silent still blinked with missed calls from cable shows, civil rights groups, and one number he didn't recognize. The restaurant's owner. He ignored them all. He wasn't ready to talk. Not yet. The media's frenzy sent Marcus back in memory to the first time he'd felt truly visible. Years ago, fresh out of college, he'd been invited to pitch his startup to a panel of venture capitalists. He had spent days crafting the deck, rehearsing his pitch, polishing his shoes. The room had been long and narrow, walls lined with abstract art and a faint smell of espresso. When he walked in, the investors looked past him as if waiting for someone else. One actually said, "I's your CEO joining us soon." Marcus had smiled tightly. "I am the CEO." He'd pitched anyway. Halfway through, one investor glanced at his phone. Another whispered to his partner. Marcus finished the presentation and left with nothing but a polite rejection email. It was the first of many. He had vowed then that no room would ever diminish him again. Now, sitting in his office, he realized this restaurant incident felt like that boardroom. Different setting, same dynamic. Across the city, the restaurant's staff moved like ghosts through a mausoleum. Half the tables were empty. Protesters chanted outside. The manager hunched over a spreadsheet of canceled reservations. 50% revenue dropped overnight, he whispered. The Mac Trey D sat at the bar, staring into a cup of cold coffee. He replayed Marcus's calm voice in his head. He'd thought he was protecting the restaurants. Standard. But now he saw the hollowness of that word. He'd spent his career policing who belonged and who didn't. A gatekeeper to a temple of taste. And for what? In the kitchen, the chef barked orders to a skeleton crew. Food critics had turned, a major delivery supplier had suspended contracts. The restaurant, once an untouchable jewel, now felt like a collapsing stage set. That afternoon, finally answered the unknown number. Mr. Ellison, a voice said with a French accent, smooth but urgent. This is Andre Moreau. owner of Le Jardin e Carlet. Please, I beg for your time. We must speak. Marcus stayed silent. We have failed you. Moreau continued. I did not know. I am horrified. I would like to meet with you, apologize personally. Perhaps we could collaborate on. Marcus cut him off. This isn't about collaborating. This is about accountability. I understand, Moreau said quickly. Please, what can we do? Change your policies. Publicly. And don't do it because of me. Do it because it's right. Moreau hesitated. We will try. Try harder, Marcus said, and hung up. Civil rights attorney Vanessa Reid arrived at Marcus's office later that day carrying a slim briefcase and a presence like a drawn sword. I've drafted a legal strategy, she said without preamble. You're not just a client. You're a precedent. Marcus gestured for her to sit. Walk me through it. Public accommodations, she said. There's a federal framework, but it's patchy. We can file a discrimination claim under state law and force discovery. Their internal emails, reservation logs. Everything. Marcus rubbed his temples. Do you think it will help? It will if we're careful. And it's not just about winning. It's about exposing the system. He looked out the window at the city. Let's do it, he said. That night, Marcus stayed late in his office, fleshing out his notes for Project Open Doors. He wrote bullet points, data. Gathering platform, legal fund, restaurant accreditation system, anonymous reporting channels. He envisioned a digital map of discrimination like a weather radar showing invisible storms. He thought of his younger self, the boy sketching circuits in a dim living room, and smiled faintly. This was still circuitry, just a different kind, connecting people, power, and change. Meanwhile, the restaurant hired a crisis PR firm. A glossy video appeared on their social media channels, a montage of diverse, smiling employees, soft piano music, captions about commitment to inclusion. Comments tore it apart. Higher policies, not piano. One wrote. Another posted. Marcus's original video under it with the caption. We don't want your trailer. We want your truth. The manager tried to hold a staff meeting. We're being destroyed, he said. We must show contrition. The Mac tradee spoke up for the first time. Or we could actually change. The room went silent. By the end of the week, Marcus noticed something inside him had shifted. He was still furious, but beneath the fury was a steady hum of purpose. He wasn't merely reacting anymore, he was planning. The humiliation had become a lever. He walked out onto his balcony, city lights flickering below like stars fallen to earth. For the first time since the incident, he felt something like hope. Not for the restaurant, for the movement. Marcus typed a final line into his proposal, open doors lead to open futures. He saved the document, shut his laptop, and leaned back. Far below, the protesters were still chanting, but now their rhythm sounded less like anger and more like a heartbeat. The following Monday morning, the lobby of Ellison Tech buzzed like a command center. Reporters clustered outside the revolving doors. Protesters held banners, but so did supporters carrying signs of encouragement. Security escorted Marcus Ellison from his car through a corridor of flashing cameras. Inside, the air smelled of coffee, ozone from the photocopiers, and the tense excitement of employees who knew their CEO's name had become a headline. Marcus moved with deliberate calm. He wore no tie, just a black sweater and slacks. Around his neck hung a simple pendant his mother had given him years ago. A silver key. To open your own doors, she'd said. Vanessa Reid had converted a conference room into a war room. Charts of case law lined the walls. A giant map of Chicago pinpointed discrimination complaints in red dots. Vanessa's legal team worked laptops at a furious pace. She greeted Marcus with a nod. "We're filing today," she said. "Civil rights discrimination under state law, public accommodations. We'll also request an injunction to force policy changes." Marcus scanned the paperwork. "What are we asking for exactly?" "Discovery of reservation logs, staff training records, internal communications. Policy revisions. Public admission of wrongdoing. And damages, though we can direct them to charity." Marcus's eyes hardened. "Let's direct everything to Project Open Doors." Vanessa smiled. "I was hoping you'd say that." At noon, stood at a podium in the Ellison Tech atrium. Employees and journalists crowded the space. Cameras blinked red lights. He spoke slowly, voice steady. "Last week, something happened to me that happens to countless people every day. But I have a platform, I have resources. So today, I'm launching Project Open Doors, a national initiative to confront discrimination in restaurants, hotels, and services. We will collect data, provide legal support, and certify businesses that meet real standards of equity." He outlined a partnership with several civil rights groups, a grant fund, and an app in development to crowdsource incidents. The applause was like a wave breaking. The press conference ricocheted around the globe. European papers covered it. South African activists invited Marcus to keynote a summit on economic access. A Brazilian newspaper compared him to their own local business leaders facing discrimination. Within days, the hashtag #FadeOpenDoors trended alongside Fade Dining While Black. Tech journalists noted the power of combining activism with data. Marcus wasn't just calling out bias, building a system to map it. In the restaurant's back office, the manager and Matt Trey D watched Marcus's press conference on a laptop. The Mac Trey D felt an unfamiliar weight in his chest. "He's building something huge," he said softly. The manager pinched his nose. "We're finished if we don't get ahead of this." The chef, arms crossed, muttered. "Then get ahead of it by actually changing, not by PR." But change was harder than it looked. Staff turnover spiked. Regular patrons vanished. The restaurant's parent company debated selling it off entirely. Back at Ellison Tech, Marcus's executive team met behind closed doors. Some were worried the activism would hurt the company's market valuation. "Investors are nervous," his CFO said. "They like you as a CEO, but they're unsure about you as an activist." Marcus leaned forward, elbows on the table. "We're not separate people," he said. "If investors can't handle a CEO who stands for equity, they can find another company to fund." Silence. Then his COO nodded slowly. "We're with you," she said. "Let's make this count." Even as Marcus's public stature soared, privately he felt the strain. His sleep was broken. His inbox overflowed with hate mail alongside praise. Trolls tried to hack his accounts. Anonymous callers left slurs on his voicemail. His security detail doubled. He sat one night on his balcony, phone dark, listening to the city wind. He thought of his sisters, of his mother, of all the doors he'd forced open, only to find new walls inside. Was this fight worth it? Then he remembered the boy with the broken pencil stub. Yes, he thought. Always yes. One morning a handwritten letter arrived at his office, rare in a world of screens. It was from his mother. Her script was steady, looping. Marcus, I saw you on TV. I'm proud of you, but remember to rest. You can't carry the whole world. Love, Mom. He read it twice, smiled, and slid it into his wallet, next to the silver key pendant. On a Thursday night, a week after the incident, Marcus walked past LeJardin, B. Carlate on his way to another meeting. Protesters were still there, but now some wore shirts reading Project Open Doors with a logo of an open keyhole. A jazz trio played on the sidewalk, turning the protest into a block party. Marcus paused, hands in his pockets, and watched for a moment. The movement wasn't just his anymore. It belonged to everyone who'd shown up. He turned and walked on, the city lights flickering like data points across a growing map. Rain streaked the courthouse steps as Marcus Ellison arrived, flanked by Vanessa Reid and her legal team. TV cameras hissed with static under umbrellas. Inside, the marble hall echoed with footsteps as though every movement belonged to history. Marcus had never felt so visible, yet so determined to disappear into his purpose. They were there for a preliminary hearing. A simple procedural moment. But the packed gallery and media frenzy turned it into a public spectacle. Vanessa whispered as they approached the security checkpoint. The judge is fair but conservative. We're not here to win today. We're here to show we're serious. Marcus nodded, tugging at his cufflinks. Let's do it. Inside the courtroom, Vanessa laid out the discrimination claim, denial of service under color of race, emotional harm, and a request for injunctive relief compelling LeJardin, B. Carlate to release internal data. The restaurant's lawyers, a high-priced team in bespoke suits, tried to paint Marcus as an opportunist. But Vanessa countered calmly. My client is not here for money. He is here for change. The judge scheduled a discovery hearing and ordered the restaurant to preserve all records. Back at LeJardin, Carlate, the Mac tradee, sat under fluorescent light with corporate auditors. Why weren't these policies updated? They ask. Where's the training documentation? He stared at the table. We were told to maintain standards. That's all. The PR firm urged a settlement. The chef threatened to quit unless they owned up publicly. Meanwhile, online reviews cratered, and video bloggers turned the incident into viral exposés titled, The Restaurant Refused the CEO. Despite public praise, Marcus's private life frayed. His partner, a museum curator, worried about the threats. I can't even check our mail without thinking of it, she said one night, eyes red. Marcus tried to reassure her, but his own hands shook. Later, alone, he opened the Project Open Doors dashboard. Thousands of reports poured in. Small towns, big cities, hotels, salons, ride, shares. The map bloomed with pins like constellations. It was bigger than he'd imagined. He closed his eyes, letting the enormity sink in. This is why we fight, he thought. Back at the office, Vanessa briefed Marcus. We're getting whistleblower emails from inside LeJardin Day. Carlate, she said. Screenshots of group chats, reservation policies. It's damning. She slid a file across the table. They had an informal code word for black customers. They'd flag certain reservations as special holds. Marcus felt his stomach knot. "We're going to expose all of it," he said. Vanessa nodded. In discovery, and in the court of public opinion, Marcus convened a brainstorming session with his engineers. "The map is step 1, he said. "We need a verification system. Businesses that meet equity standards can display a badge. Customers can filter by certified safe spaces." His lead designer sketched a clean interface with a green key symbol. "Make it like a credit card seal," she said. "Visible and trustworthy." Marcus added, "And real, time push alerts for users entering areas with repeated incidents is power." With visibility came stories, thousands of them. A veteran denied entry to a private club. A mother and son were humiliated at a hotel check-in desk. A teenager fired from a job after speaking up about bias. Marcus began hosting weekly live streams to read a few stories aloud. His voice cracked more than once. "It's not just about me," he told viewers. "It's about all of us." Meanwhile, André Moreau, the Paris-based owner of Lee Jardin Bait Carlet, flew into Chicago under cover of night. He met with civil rights leaders privately, offering to fund training programs and publicly support Project Open Doors. But the movement had grown beyond one man's donation. It required systemic change. Moreau finally agreed to release an unedited statement to the press. "We've discriminated. We must change." It was a crack in the armor, but not yet enough to halt the lawsuit. Talk shows debated the case nightly. Conservative pundits call Marcus a grandstander. Civil rights advocates called him a necessary catalyst. International outlets framed it as part of a larger conversation about access and power. Stock analysts noticed Ellison Tech's share price dipping slightly, then rebounding as customers flooded the company's platforms in solidarity. Late one evening, Marcus sat in his office surrounded by charts and laptops. Vanessa came in quietly, holding 2 mugs of tea. "You're doing okay?" she asked. He exhaled. "I'm scared," he admitted. "But I'm not stopping." They sipped tea in silence, the city outside a blur of rain and neon. For the first time, allowed himself to think, we might actually win this. The courthouse hallway smelled of paper, coffee, and tension. Marcus Ellison sat on a wooden bench next to Vanessa Reid, waiting for the judge to call the next session. From them sat 2 nervous former employees of Lee Jardin Carlet, their hands wrapped around paper cups of water. One was a hostess, barely 22, who had quit after the incident. The other was a chef who'd worked in the kitchen for 3 years. They had come forward with internal documents and sworn statements. The first human voices behind the screenshots and anonymous emails. Inside the hearing room, the hostess spoke first. Her voice trembled but grew stronger with each sentence. "We were told to manage the door, to protect the restaurant's image," she said. "That meant denying reservations from certain people. Black, brown, anyone who didn't look wealthy enough. We had a list of code words. Mr. Ellison's reservation was flagged before he even arrived." Gasps rippled through the audience. The chef corroborated the story, describing staff meetings where the manager handed out guidelines about exclusive clientele. Vanessa rose to summarize. This was not an accident. This was a policy. The judge's face remained neutral, but he ordered full disclosure of training manuals and reservation logs. For the first time, the restaurant's lawyers 400. After the lock rattled, after the hearing, Marcus walked down the courthouse steps into a sea of microphones. But this time the questions weren't about him, they were about the movement. What's next for Project Open Doors? Will you expand beyond restaurants? How can people help? He smiled slightly. We've built the foundation. We're scaling it. This isn't just about me. This is about equity for everyone. That night, he checked the Project Open Doors dashboard. The map had turned into a living constellation, pins glowing across North America, Europe, Africa, and South America. Engineers had added a new feature, safety spots, verified by on-site audits. Users could now see a green key badge next to certain businesses. Back in Chicago, Andre Morau and his executive team met late into the night. "We cannot survive this," said the CFO. "The lawsuit, the protests, it's over." But Morau surprised them. "Then we transform. We turn Leijardin Carlate into the flagship of a new standard. We invite Project Open Doors to audit us publicly. We become the first certified restaurant under their system." The room went silent. "That's suicide." One manager muttered, "No." Morau replied, "It's rebirth." When Morau reached out, Marcus's team debated furiously. Vanessa warned, "They're trying to neutralize you by opting the movement." Marcus considered it. "Or," he said, "we force them to change for real our terms." He laid down conditions, a full apology, reparations donated to equity programs, complete public transparency, and a permanent seat for Project Open Doors on the restaurant's advisory board. Marcus Reid received another letter from his mother. This one was just a single line on a folded card. "Remember, a door isn't open if it only swings one way." He kept it on his desk as he negotiated with the restaurant's legal team. International media began to frame Marcus as part of a new wave of activist executives. Universities invited him to speak about corporate responsibility. His app topped downloads in the social impact category. Civil rights groups in Europe and Africa requested partnerships. But with the spotlight came risk. Tried to infiltrate Project Open Doors. Disinformation campaigns popped up claiming Marcus had staged the incident. Troll farms spread edited videos. Vanessa's legal team worked overtime to counter the false narratives. Late at night, Marcus sat at his kitchen table, staring at his phone. Messages poured in from strangers calling him a hero. But he still felt the sting of the restaurant's denial. He wondered if his life would ever be normal. Again, he thought of Danielle, who had moved into her sister's apartment temporarily for safety. He missed her. He took out the silver key pendant and held it. "Open doors, open futures," he whispered. In a glass-walled conference room at Ellison Tech, Marcus and Vanessa faced the restaurant's lawyers on a video call. Morrow appeared on screen, looking weary but resolute. "Mr. Ellison," he said, "we are ready to meet your conditions." Marcus leaned forward, his face reflected in the dark screen. "Then let's open this door together. But understand, it will never close again." The call ended. Outside, the city hummed. Project Open Doors had moved from idea to institution. And Marcus Ellison, once denied a table, was now rewriting the entire menu. The morning sky over Chicago was the color of slate and pewter when Marcus Ellison arrived at Ellis Tech's conference center. He'd hardly slept, his mind running through clauses and counter-clauses of the agreement with Jordan E. Carlett. Today would be the signing ceremony. If everything held. Inside, tables were arranged with microphones and small placards. One read, Project Open Doors. The other, Jordan B. Carlett. Between them, a stack of contracts waited, flanked by lawyers and camera crews. Moreau arrived flanked by his legal counsel, but this time no one postured. The power dynamic had shifted. Vanessa opened the meeting. These are the terms, she said. Public apology, full transparency of training and hiring records, donation of $1 million to community equity initiatives, and permanent advisory status for Project Open Doors. Moreau nodded. And we will undergo quarterly audits and display the certification badge in our Windows and online platforms. Marcus watched him carefully. Understand? Marcus said. This is not a rebrand. This is a rebuild. Moreau met his gaze. I understand. They signed. 2 hours later, they stood together at a podium in front of a press scrum. Vanessa spoke first, then Moreau read his public apology. Marcus concluded, This is the first restaurant in the world certified under Project Open Doors. This is a beginning, not an end. We hope others will follow. Flashbulbs went off. Reporters shouted questions. The news cycle spun. Weeks later, Marcus visited Jordan Carlett in person for the first time since the incident. The interior had changed, new artwork by local black artists, an expanded kitchen staff, a scholarship program for culinary students of color. The Mac Trayer D, now a different person entirely, greeted him warmly. Marcus noticed subtle differences. The absence of tension in the room, the diverse clientele, the sense of openness. He still remembered the humiliation, but the space no longer carried the same sting. It felt like a wound closing. That evening, Marcus met Danielle for dinner at a small, family-run cafe. For the first time in months, they laughed freely. She teased him about his hero face on magazine covers. He told her about his nightmares, his fears, and his hopes. She squeezed his hand. I'm proud of you, she said softly. But I'm even prouder you're still you. He smiled. I'm trying. Back at Ellison Tech, Marcus's engineers unveiled the next version of the Project Open Doors app. Businesses could now apply for certification directly, upload their policies, and schedule audits. Customers could leave reviews tied to verification badges. Civil rights lawyers in multiple states volunteered to take discrimination cases pro bono under the initiative. News outlets dubbed it the Yelp of equity. But Marcus disliked the comparison. It's not about ratings, he told them. It's about rights. A coalition of hotels, airlines, and retail brands reached out to join. Universities offered research partnerships. The city council proposed incentives for certified businesses. What had begun as a reaction was now a network with real leverage. Vanessa warned Marcus to guard against mission drift. They'll try to use you for PR, she said. Stay focused on the people. Marcus nodded. We will. Late at night, Marcus sat at his office desk, the silver key pendant resting beside his laptop. He opened his mother's letters and reread them. Her words about doors swinging both ways echoed in his mind. He realized he wasn't just fighting to get through doors. He was trying to make sure they stayed open for everyone else, even those who'd once closed them. But on a cool spring evening, Marcus and Danielle walked past Le Chardin Carlet again. This time no protesters, no chance. Just diners chatting through open windows, live music drifting out onto the street. In the window hung a large green key badge with the words, "Certified Open." Door. Marcus stopped, took Danielle's hand, and smiled. "It's only one door," he said. "But it's open." They walked on, the city lights reflecting off wet pavement like a million small possibilities. Months after that first humiliating night, Marcus Ellison stood at the podium of a grand hall in Washington, D.C., testifying before Congress. His app, his lawsuit, and his relentless push for accountability had ignited a nationwide conversation about discrimination in public spaces. Behind him hung a large banner reading PRJCT Open Duo Os, a CCE's SA or IGHT. He spoke of data and law, but also of dignity and belonging. "Every door we open," he said to the packed room, "is another chance for someone to walk through without fear or shame. That's the point of this work, not just to punish bad actors, but to rebuild the culture of access itself." Across the country, restaurants, hotels, and retailers had begun applying for certification. A handful had transformed their policies, training, and hiring practices. Others resisted, but the tide had shifted. Customers now expected and rewarded equity. The restaurant where it all began, once infamous, had become a flagship of reform, a living example of how institutions could change when pushed. Marcus no longer saw it as a place of pain, but as proof that even entrenched systems could evolve under pressure and sunlight. In his personal life, Marcus had rediscovered balance. Danielle had returned home. They were planning a trip abroad. The hate mail had slowed. His sleep was still uneven, but no longer haunted by helplessness. Now he dreamed of corridors full of open doors, light spilling from each. On the day Project Open Doors certified its 1,000th business, Marcus received a short message from his mother. "Proud of you. Keep the key turning." That night, standing on his balcony overlooking Chicago, held the silver key pendant and thought about the boy he once was, the one denied, doubted, and underestimated. He smiled. He had become not just the man with the key, but the one building doors. The one of building doors. The lesson of Marcus Ellison's journey was simple yet profound. One act of discrimination can spark a movement. One closed door can inspire 1,000 openings. His story began with humiliation, but it ended with a blueprint for change. And as he looked out at the city lights, Marcus understood at last the door he had fought to open would not swing shut again. Not for him, and not for the countless others walking toward it.